Bruce Lee defined martial arts, Michael Jordan defined basketball, and Arnold Schwarzenegger redefined muscles on the American big screen. 7 times Mr. Olympia. One of Hollywood's biggest action stars, movies that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and after all that, he even became governor of California. But because that career got so massive, that's where the question starts getting messy. Which role is Arnold's true classic? Which role made him immortal? Which one was underrated, which one got trashed, but somehow lived forever as a meme? Today, come with me as we go back in time from 1977 to 1997 through 13 roles that turned Arnold from a gym legend into an action movie legend. And don't leave too early. At the end of the video, I'm opening up 5 of the most argument-starting facts, the role that hurt Arnold the most, the movie that made him the most money, the role he loved, that shocked fans, and one decision in T2 that Arnold hated. Ready, Arnold fans? Number 1, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pumping Iron. Surprised I'm not starting with the Terminator, and I'm not starting with Conan either. I'm starting with Pumping Iron because before Arnold Schwarzenegger became Hollywood's action hero, he learned how to turn himself into a character people wanted to watch. The movie came out in 1977 when Arnold was 30 years old. This wasn't an action movie. No guns, no robots, no aliens. It was a bodybuilding documentary directed by George Butler and Robert Fiore centered around Mr. Olympia, 1975. When they filmed it, Arnold was 28, and he had already won Mr. Olympia 5 years in a row from 1970 to 1974. Back then, Hollywood still had no idea what to do with his name, his accent, or his massive body. But inside the gym, Arnold was already the guy everybody was chasing. And maybe the saddest thing was that his father passed away during that period. The movie wasn't some giant box office hit, but it helped bring bodybuilding out of the gym and into mainstream American culture. Some sources say Arnold agreed to compete in Mr. Olympia 1975 after being paid around $50,000. And that number wasn't just about money. It showed Arnold understood very early on that his body wasn't only going to win trophies, it could sell tickets too. Anybody here watch Pumping Iron before discovering Arnold through Terminator? If you did, sound off in the comments. And now let's move to the second role, the one I'm sure you already know. Number 2, Conan the Barbarian. Conan isn't Arnold Schwarzenegger's most iconic role, but without Conan, we probably never would have gotten the Arnold of the 80s. In 1982, when the movie came out, Arnold was 35 years old. This was the first time Hollywood really put a big movie on his shoulders and said, all right, let's see if this guy can sell tickets. Conan the Barbarian was directed by John Milius with a script by Milius and Oliver Stone based on Conan created by Robert E. Howard. The cast included James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom Sandal Bergman, Max von Sydow, and Mako. And don't overlook Basil Polidoris' score. For a lot of fans, that music is a huge reason the movie still carries weight more than 40 years later. Before this movie, Arnold was still viewed as a strange gamble, too muscular, too Austrian-sounding, too different from the traditional Hollywood leading man. Conan was the first movie that turned all those things into a product people would actually buy tickets for. Arnold didn't need to talk like some classic movie star. He just had to make audiences believe nobody else could play this role. The movie had a budget of around $20 million and made somewhere between $68.9 and $79.1 million worldwide. Not a gigantic blockbuster, but still a clear win. Critics didn't exactly bow down to this movie. Some people called it rough, violent, heavy-handed. But the fans kept it alive for more than 40 years, enough to turn it into a cult classic and earn it a sequel in 1984. Arnold made around $250,000 for this movie. Not peak-era Arnold yet, but enough to show Hollywood was starting to bet on him. After Conan, Arnold became a name that could go right on the poster. But Conan only opened the door. 2 years later, Arnold became legendary with a leather jacket, a pair of dark sunglasses, and a few short lines. You know which role I'm talking about, right? Sit up straight because I'm about to hit the role that drove audiences crazy. Number 3, T-800, the Terminator. Let's just say it straight. If Arnold Schwarzenegger only had Conan, he probably still would have been a memorable fantasy star of the 80s, but the Terminator was the role that turned him into a global icon. In 1984, when the movie came out, Arnold was 37 years old, and after this movie, the leather jacket, the sunglasses, and that cold, robotic walk became instantly recognizable. The Terminator was directed by James Cameron, written by Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd. The main cast included Arnold, Linda Hamilton, and Michael Biehn. Arnold played the T-800, a machine assassin sent back to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor. Today it sounds like destiny, but back then it wasn't that simple. At one point, Arnold was being considered for Kyle Reese. O.J. Simpson's name even floated around for the Terminator role. But after meeting Arnold, Cameron realized the key thing: Arnold shouldn't be the guy running from the machine. He should be the machine. What's interesting is Arnold wasn't that excited at first. This role was the villain, almost emotionless, with only around 17 lines of dialogue. For an actor trying to become a leading man, that wasn't exactly an easy sell. But the more he read the script, the more he got pulled into it. And then the role exploded. Everything people once saw as Arnold's limitations, the accent, the body, all of it, became part of an iconic performance. So let me ask you honestly, do you think this was Arnold's best acting performance or just the most perfectly cast role in action movie history? Drop it in the comments, because I know Arnold fans are never going to fully agree on this one. But no matter what the answer is, we still have to admit this movie was a massive hit. Made on around $6.4 million and earning roughly $78 million worldwide. AFI later ranked Terminator among the greatest movie villains ever, and the movie was added to the National Film Registry in 2008. And after Arnold proved he could silence an entire theater with just a few lines, Hollywood decided to try the exact opposite. Let's move to a role that was completely different but just as iconic. Number 4. John Matrix, Commando. In 1985, Arnold Schwarzenegger was 38 years old, and Commando pushed him in a totally different direction from the Terminator. No more silent machine from the future. This time he was John Matrix, a former Special Forces soldier whose daughter gets kidnapped. The important thing is Commando proved Arnold wasn't surviving off the T-800 role alone. If the Terminator made him a cold, intimidating figure, John Matrix turned him into the kind of action hero audiences could cheer for from beginning to end. This was that classic one man against an army-style movie that defined the 80s, and Arnold looked like he was born to stand right in the middle of it. Commercially, the movie had a budget of around $10 million and made around $35 million domestically. It opened at number 1 in America and stayed there for its first 3 weeks. Rotten Tomatoes later called Commando pretty much the ultimate 80s Arnold movie. And honestly, I get why. The movie doesn't overcomplicate anything. It knows exactly what the audience wants and gives it to them. According to AFI, Arnold even performed many of his own stunts because it was hard finding stunt doubles built like him. He dislocated his shoulder and needed stitches during filming. In other words, this movie wasn't just selling muscles on a poster. John Matrix isn't some complicated character, but the role did one very important thing. It turned Arnold into the kind of action hero American men back then could watch over and over without getting tired of it. But right after Commando showed audiences, Arnold could wipe out an entire army. Predator did something smarter. It threw him into the jungle, gave him an enemy unlike anything he'd ever faced, and for the first time turned Arnold into the prey. Number 5, Dutch. Predator. Dutch is one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best action roles because this time muscles weren't enough. In 1987, Arnold was 40 years old, and Predator dropped him into a movie where the big guns, the elite soldiers, and the unbeatable image slowly stopped working. What made Dutch different from John Matrix and Commando was that this movie didn't let Arnold dominate everything from beginning to end. Dutch starts out confident. He's got a strong team heavy weapons combat experience. But Predator strips all of that away, piece by piece. One by one, his team gets taken out. Guns stop solving the problem. By the end, Dutch survives using Trap's mud patience and intelligence. The production wasn't easy either. The cast trained for around a month and a half in Los Angeles, then went through a week of boot camp in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with running, tree-climbing, rope work weapons, training, and weightlifting. The jungle set even had to be watered daily with fake trees, rocks, and vines added to make it look denser. Production actually shut down after 6 weeks because the original Predator design wasn't working, and the crew had to come back months later to finish the final confrontation. The movie had a budget of around $15 to $18 million and made roughly $98.3 million worldwide. It opened at number 1 in America and got nominated for the Academy Award for Visual Effects in 1988. Critics weren't fully united at first, but time ended up on this movie's side. To me, Dutch matters because he doesn't win the easy way. He loses the advantage, loses his team, loses control, and only then survives. And in that same year, 1987, Arnold played another hunted man. But this time, it wasn't in the jungle. It was on television in an America where death had become entertainment. That was Ben Richards in The Running Man. Number 6, Ben Richards, The Running Man. When I was a kid watching The Running Man, I thought it was just an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie about running, fighting, and surviving some crazy game show. The older I got, the more uncomfortable the movie became because it's not really about violence. It's about how television can sell violence to audiences as entertainment. The movie came out in 1987 when Arnold was 40 years old. The Running Man was directed by Paul Michael Glaser, written by Stephen E. D'Souza, and based on the novel by Richard Bachman, the pen name of Stephen King. Arnold played Ben Richards, a man falsely accused and forced into a deadly television competition. Christopher Reeve had actually been signed for the lead role at one point. Just imagine that for a second. If Superman had played Ben Richards, the movie probably would have been colder and more serious. Arnold stepped in and suddenly the movie became bigger, louder, pure, late 80s action. Production wasn't smooth either. Andrew Davis was originally directing but got replaced less than 2 weeks after principal photography started. Financially, the movie didn't explode like Predator. With a budget of around $25 to $30 million, it made over $38 million domestically and stayed number 1 for its first 2 weeks. Not some gigantic victory, but enough to keep the movie from disappearing. In 2025, Arnold even said this was the one movie of his he always wanted remade. And I get it. The Running Man doesn't survive because it predicted every detail of the future correctly. It survives because it understood something very early on. When the screen decides who the hero is and who the monster is, audiences will sometimes believe the screen before they believe the truth. Number 7. Julius Benedict, Twins. If you only heard the pitch on paper, Twins sounds like a joke. Arnold Schwarzenegger after killer robots, commandos, jungle warriors, and hunted prisoners suddenly playing twins with Danny DeVito. But in 1988, that joke made real money, and it changed how Hollywood looked at Arnold. When the movie came out, Arnold was 41 years old. The movie didn't try to turn Arnold into a traditional comedian. Instead, it used exactly what audiences already knew about him: the giant body, the serious face, the stiff way of talking, and flipped it into innocence. Julius is strong, smart kind, but he barely understands normal life. Put him next to Danny DeVito's sneaky, fast-talking Vincent, and the movie instantly has a fun duo. And audiences bought tickets. Twins had a budget of around $15 million, but made around $216.6 million worldwide. It opened at number 1 in America and stayed there for its first 3 weekends. Critics didn't praise it like some masterpiece, but audiences clearly enjoyed seeing Arnold in a different lane. And you'll probably be even more surprised to learn Arnold, Danny DeVito, and Ivan Reitman didn't take traditional upfront salaries. They chose back-end profit percentages instead. Arnold later said, Twins ended up being the movie that made him the most money in his entire career, more than many of his famous action movies. But Arnold didn't stay in that comedic space for long. 2 years later, he returned to science fiction, this time with a movie that was darker, stranger, and built around one uncomfortable question: are your own memories even real? That was Douglas Quaid in Total Recall. Number 8, Douglas Quaid, Total Recall. When you rank Arnold Schwarzenegger's best movies, Total Recall almost always lands near the top. In 1990, Arnold was 43, and this was one of the movies that proved he had reached the level of a star who could carry an entire major project with him. Total Recall was directed by Paul Verhoeven, based on Philip K. Dick's short story, We Can Remember It for You Wholesale. Arnold played Douglas Quaid, a man pulled into a conspiracy involving memory, identity, and Mars. What's worth pointing out is Arnold didn't just take the role and show up on set. After the project ran into trouble, Arnold and Carolco Pictures bought the rights for around $3 million. Arnold liked RoboCop, so he wanted Paul Verhoeven to direct. From there, the movie was pushed more clearly toward action, sci-fi, exactly the kind of thing that could sell tickets with Arnold's name. The scale of the movie was also huge for 1990. The budget was listed at around $48 to $50 million. A lot of the movie was shot in Mexico, with the Mars sets built at Churubusco Studios using plenty of practical effects, models, animatronics, and visual effects techniques from that era. Total Recall opened with around $25.5 million, made about $119.4 million domestically, about $150 million internationally, and about $261 million worldwide. The movie didn't just make money, it also received the Oscar Special Achievement Award for visual effects. Right now, Rotten Tomatoes lists the movie at about 81% on the tomatometer and 79% on the popcorn meter. And then in classic Arnold fashion, he changed direction again. After a big, violent, expensive sci-fi movie, he turned to comedy. But this time, the one making him suffer wasn't Danny DeVito. It was a kindergarten class in Kindergarten Cop. Number 9, John Kimball. Kindergarten Cop. Kindergarten Cop was the second proof after Twins that Arnold Schwarzenegger doing comedy wasn't just luck. In 1990, Arnold was 43 and audiences were used to seeing him walk into a room and make everybody else nervous. This movie did the opposite. It threw him into a kindergarten classroom where not one kid cared that he used to be the Terminator or John Matrix. Ivan Reitman, the guy who had just helped Arnold win big with Twins, directed this movie too. Arnold played John Kimball, a Los Angeles cop who has to go undercover as a kindergarten teacher to track down a criminal's family. Audiences didn't just laugh and forget about it. The movie cost around $26 million, but made about $202 million worldwide. Critics were split, which isn't surprising, but the A- cinema score showed that general audiences received it pretty well. The important thing is Kindergarten Cop didn't damage Arnold's brand, it opened another door. From here, he wasn't just the guy of guns, muscles, and explosions. He could also sell tickets to family audiences. To me, John Kimball works because the movie understands one thing correctly: don't make Arnold pretend to be small. Let him stay huge, serious, and full of authority, then put him in front of the only opponent that isn't scared of any of that children. And then just when audiences had gotten used to a softer Arnold, he returned to the biggest role of his life. Only one thing was different this time: the machine was no longer a nightmare. It became a protector. That was Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Number 10, T-800, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. You can argue Arnold Schwarzenegger was coolest in Predator, fiercest in Conan, or funniest in Commando. But if you ask which role made audiences truly love Arnold, I think the answer is Terminator 2. You guys can argue with me in the comments, but I know a lot of people are going to side with T2. The movie came out in 1991 when Arnold was 44. This time, Arnold was still the T-800, but the mission had completely flipped. The machine that was once sent back to kill Sarah Connor now returned to protect her son. That was a very smart move. The movie didn't replace Arnold. It kept that same face, that same voice, that same walk, and changed his mission. If the T-800 still killed like he did in Part 1, audiences never would have loved him the way they loved him in Part 2. And this wasn't just about emotion. T2 was a box office monster. The budget was listed at around $75 to $100 million, massive for that time, but the movie made more than $515 million worldwide and became the highest-grossing movie of 1991. Robert Patrick, as the T-1000, also gave audiences a new kind of nightmare liquid metal shape, shifting almost impossible to stop. No surprise, the movie won 4 Oscars, including visual effects. Be honest, if you had to choose just one T-800, would you choose the Killing Machine from 1984 or the Protector in T2? But after standing on top with Terminator 2, Arnold did something extremely risky. He took his own action star image and made fun of it, and this time, audiences weren't sure they wanted to laugh along with him. That was Jack Slater in Last Action Hero. Number 11, Jack Slater, Last Action Hero. I'll just say it, Last Action Hero is the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie people argue about more than they actually sit down and rewatch fairly. In 1993, Arnold was 46, and Jack Slater was a very strange move. He took the action star image that was making him rich, then let the movie take direct shots at that image. The movie came out on June 18, 1993, directed by John McTiernan, the man who made Predator and Die Hard. Arnold played Jack Slater, a fictional action cop. The special thing is Jack Slater wasn't just another action cop role. He was an exaggerated version of the kind of hero Arnold had played before, almost immortal, always ready with a short one-liner, and living in a world where explosions happen like everyday life. The movie spoofed the very things audiences used to love about 80s action movies. The problem was, in 1993, audiences weren't necessarily ready for Arnold to joke about Arnold. Financially, the movie fell short of expectations. The budget was around $85 million. It opened with around $15.3 million, made about $50 million domestically, and about $137.3 million worldwide. Coming out just 1 week after Jurassic Park, it basically walked straight into the line of fire. Not many summer movies that year could survive under Spielberg's dinosaur shadow. I know some people will say this movie failed because it deserved to, because it's messy. I get that, but I also understand the other side. Maybe in 1993, audiences just weren't ready for Arnold to dissect the Arnold formula. After that messy meta swing, Arnold chose something much easier to understand: no magic ticket. No Hollywood spoofing, just a dad desperate for a Christmas toy. And that dad was Howard Langston in Jingle All the Way. Number 12. Howard Langston, Jingle All the Way. Jingle All the Way went wide in 1996 when Arnold was 49. Arnold played Howard Langston, a busy dad trying to get his son a Turbo Man at the last minute before Christmas. The special thing this time is Arnold wasn't saving the world. He was just trying to save a Christmas morning from his kid's disappointment. Howard's enemy wasn't a robot, a mercenary, or an alien monster. His enemy was sold-out stores, crazed parents, the pressure of being a father, and American shopping madness. The movie had a budget of around $60 million and made about $129.8 million worldwide. But critics were not gentle. Rotten Tomatoes is only around 20% and Metacritic is around 34%. And yet this is still a movie a lot of people rewatch every Christmas season. And now we get to the final role on the list. This isn't Arnold's most loved role, and it's not the one critics treated the nicest. But when it comes to notoriety, cost, meme power, and the ability to live on even after getting trashed, this role is almost impossible to leave out. Number 13, Mr. Freeze, Batman and Robin. And this is the final role on the list, not because it's the best. Now, let's be honest, almost nobody calls Mr. Freeze Arnold Schwarzenegger's best performance, but when it comes to notoriety, cost, meme power, and the ability to live on even after getting trashed, this role has to be here. Batman and Robin came out in 1997 when Arnold was 50. Arnold played Dr. Victor Freeze, also known as Mr. Freeze. This role doesn't try to make Arnold serious. It throws him straight into a giant silver suit of armor, gives him a whole string of ice jokes, and turns him into the kind of over-the-top comic book villain you either hate or remember for the rest of your life. And this is where the story gets truly funny. The Los Angeles Times once reported that Arnold was paid around $25 million for about 6 weeks of work. You can criticize Mr. Freeze all you want, but business-wise, Arnold did not lose. The movie had a budget of around $125 million, opened with more than $42.8 million in North America, and made about $238 million worldwide. That doesn't sound small, but with the cost expectations and the Batman brand, it was a major disappointment. But Mr. Freeze never disappeared. The ice puns people trashed back then later became memes. The suit was too much. The accent was too heavy. Everything was too much, but because it was too much, nobody forgot it. And after these 13 roles, the real question begins: what does Arnold think about the roles that made him famous? Which role hurt him the most? Which one made him the most money? Which role does he love more than even his action icons? The final section is where every answer starts an argument. And this is where I want to pause for a second. After those 13 roles, the question isn't just which role is the most famous, which one made the most money, or which one you rewatch the most. The more interesting question is, how does Arnold actually look back on those roles? Let's start with Last Action Hero. I don't think this was just a movie that opened below expectations. It hurt more than that. Arnold had just come off Terminator 2, he was at the top, and then he made a movie that took direct shots at his own action star image. And audiences in 1993 did not go with him. Later, Arnold said that failure made him feel embarrassed, hurt so much he didn't want to see anybody for a week. What do you think? Was this movie really messy, or did it just arrive too early? Then there's the coldest deal that wasn't cold at all, Mr. Freeze. You can trash Batman and Robin. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's a good Batman movie either, but Arnold was paid around $25 million for about 6 weeks of work. 6 weeks. $25 million. If you were paid that much to wear a silver suit of armor and say ice jokes, would you turn it down? I'm not going to act morally superior on this one. But don't be so quick to think Mr. Freeze was Arnold's biggest payday. Here's the twist I always loved telling Terminator fans: the movie that made Arnold the most money had no robot, no shotgun, no dark sunglasses. It had Danny DeVito. That was twins. Arnold DeVito and Yvonne Reitman chose not to take normal upfront salaries and instead took back-end points. Arnold once said that deal made him more than $40 million. A comedy about twin brothers beat a bunch of legendary action movies. Hollywood never runs out of tricks. And if you're a hardcore action fan, this part might bother you. Arnold once picked Kindergarten Cop as his favorite movie of his own. I know you want him to pick Predator. You want him to pick T2. I get it too. But the more I think about it, the more Arnold that choice feels. That movie proved he wasn't trapped inside muscles, guns, and leather jackets. He could stand in the middle of a classroom full of kids, have his rhythm completely thrown off, and still sell tickets. Finally, one way or another, we have to come back to Terminator 2. The thing that made the T-800 most beloved was actually the thing Arnold didn't like. At first, this machine doesn't kill anyone. On paper, I understand Arnold. A Terminator who doesn't kill anyone sounds like it loses its edge. But on screen, James Cameron was right. The fact that the T-800 learned to protect is exactly what turned it from a nightmare into a hero. So answer honestly, if the T-800 and T2 still killed people, like in Part 1, would the movie still be loved the way it is today? Personally, I'm with Cameron. But I understand Arnold too. And that's exactly why this story is still worth arguing about today. The other day, I randomly read a Reddit thread asking Arnold Schwarzenegger, why is he famous? And I remember thinking that question sounds simple, but it deserves a whole video where people can really argue it out. Because after those 13 roles, the answer clearly isn't just muscles. And it isn't just Terminator either. Arnold is famous because he could be Conan the T-800, Dutch John Matrix, then turn around and do Twins, Kindergarten Cop, even Mr. Freeze. Some roles won big, some got absolutely trashed, some made crazy money, some only got defended years later. So now it's your turn. Where do you push back on this list? Which role did I rank wrong? Which unforgivable missing role did I leave out? And the bigger question, what's the key difference between Arnold and a lot of other action stars? Is it the muscles, the voice, the business instinct, the self-mockery, or the ability to turn even his limitations into a brand? This is Weird Movie Secrets, where we don't just bring up old movies for fun, we dig them back up, argue about them, and sometimes defend movies critics once kicked into the dirt. If you like this kind of video, subscribe to the channel, and down in the comments, suggest the next person: Stallone, Bruce Willis, Van Damme, Jackie Chan, or another action legend you want us to break down.